What's up, family? I'm Bryant Hawkins Sr., and this is HTM on the Line. This is our first episode of 2026, and we're starting the year with purpose. Today, I'm sitting down with Ryan Gonzalez, president of HTMA Ohio, and Alex Collins, two leaders who prove that HTM profession grows when we do. If you're ready for more than just a job, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. I'm excited to have Alex Collins and Ryan Gonzalez on HTM on the Line. Let's get into it. First questions to you, Ryan. Before leadership roles and involvement, what made you care enough about this profession to raise your hand and join HTMA Ohio?
That's a great question. To be honest, at the beginning of my career, or sort of mid-level of my career, I joined HTMA Ohio because I had reached a point where I had worked 10 years as a biomed and I kind of felt stuck. And I was wondering to myself, well, what's next? What else am I capable of? So I joined HTMA Ohio as just a member to sort of figure out what are other people in the industry doing. And then I fell in love with it, kind of seeing the camaraderie and the passion all of these folks in my community had for this industry. And it just cascaded. And next thing I know, I'm a board member, helping put on an event. And next thing you know, vice president and now the president.
Right. So now what I'm hearing is that it wasn't just about a title, but it seemed like it was about responsibility. Now, Alex, Ryan talked about realizing the industry need and more than just having skilled technicians. What was missing in your own career that pushed you toward getting involved in HTMA Ohio?
Yeah, no, that's a great question as well. So I had an interesting journey to join, I'll just say the career or civilian workforce. So I'm a prior military biomed. And then one of the interesting parts of being a military biomed is we move from facility to facility, unit to unit. So I was always very used to the facility you work in not being kind of your primary role, but it's your position in the industry. It's, you do great work here, but eventually you're going to move to another facility and then you need to keep doing great work and you need to bring the work you did over there to your new facility. And when I joined my first civilian job, I was an imaging engineer. I worked across multiple accounts and I was really lacking that sense of industry camaraderie, as like I felt a part of a profession in an industry because I was kind of lone wolf, road warrior, just doing my work. I eventually got to a point where I was in Ohio. I had gotten into an in-house imaging position and I was working, and I noticed we can get so cubbyholed in the facility we work in that we forget that there's this larger industry that we can rely on. So I believe it was at my very first attendance at HTMA Ohio's Expo, where I had a want, I had a drive of a goal I wanted to do, and I approached HTMA Ohio, and I have this game plan, I have this roadmap of something I want to do for the industry. I don't really know how or the means of how I'm going to do this. And Ryan just enabled me. And before I knew it, we were running a CBET study hall. We got like 70-80% pass rate and got a bunch of people their CBET. But it was through association work where I was able to really feel connected to the industry again and not just feel like I'm going in and doing my job.
Great answer, man. Now, a lot of people listening are probably good at their jobs, but disconnected from the bigger picture. Now, this question is for both of you. You both kind of touched on it some, but what's one truth about HTM that should reignite pride, but often gets overlooked? I'll go with you first, Alex.
Yeah. So as far as reigniting kind of that pride and joy in doing what we do, it really is getting with other biomeds that aren't in your facility. I don't care how big your shop is or how great of a team you have. There is always a bigger picture and a larger industry behind you. And when you find out the work other facilities do, we always have, as biomeds, this kind of sense of obligation of like, we're trying to make the hospital the best place possible. We're trying to enable healthcare the best way we can. How can you do that when you don't know the work other people are doing? They may have solved that problem that you have in your facility, but when you're not connected to other facilities, other organizations, other companies, and have an idea of how they approach certain situations, how can you honestly say that you're doing the best job you can? There's different work processes that different ISOs do or different in-house programs do that you just aren't going to be aware of. And I'm not saying you need the logistics of what enables them in the background. Like we all have our own softwares and stuff, but just the work processes and the concepts of what we do, those can be translated into their systems, into everyone's systems. But how can you honestly say you're doing the best job possible when you aren't aware of what other facilities are doing? So when you connect within an association, you get to see what everyone else is doing. And if you have a problem, you can bring it up to an association or at an expo, and other people can kind of say like, oh yeah, we had that issue. This is what we did to solve it, and take your learnings from there. And when you get that spark again. It's like, oh, I have work to do now. I know we were kind of steady state operations, not doing anything too exciting, and you can kind of stagnate. But when you kind of get that, oh, there was this solution, you get that fire in you again, and you have work to do.
So for me, the thing that I really want to impress on anyone in this industry is that the beauty of this industry is it really fosters you to be whatever you want to be. It is one of the few career fields where you can come into it as from any background. For myself, from a very poor, misguided background. For others, if they did a 4-year college, is you can come into this and really turn yourself into whatever you want this to be. If you want to be the guy who sits at a desk and fixes equipment all day long, you can do that. If you want to become a leader of people, if you want to start your own business, if you want to become a professor, wherever it is you want to go, this profession can take you there. It provides those types of opportunities, and it's going to be whatever you make it. So for me, that's what I found. It took me a little while to get there, but it's what I found is when I decided I was done being a technician and I want to become more, the profession was there for me. And joining HTMA Ohio has really helped me with that because I got to be surrounded by like-minded individuals who are trying to be better tomorrow than they are today, whether it's through education, through community service, through whatever those means may be. We're all there to support each other and help guide each other along that path.
Okay, great. So it's like, Ryan, both of your answers, it's like you guys are really thinking of the next question I'm asking before I ask it, because my next question to you guys is, why do you believe this profession is still worth investing in, especially right now? Why do you believe this profession is still worth investing in? We go with you, Ryan.
Oh, that's an easy one. The opportunities really are endless, and they're becoming more and more. With the introduction of AI, there's a lot of professions that are becoming minimized or become lesser, going away. HTM is not one of those, at least not anytime in the near future. We need hands in the hospital to fix equipment, to install equipment, to be there by the bedside when it breaks and the clinical end user is not able to treat a patient. We need physical bodies to go in there and help enable the equipment to be able to work and treat patients. That's not going away. And again, to my other point was, you can come in as an entry level and really work yourself up to supervisor, manager, VP to really elevate your whole life and your family.
Yeah, so I mean, to Ryan's point, we can start pretty entry level. You can get in moving beds, and that can segue you into HTMA. And it's one of those. This is for those that are in the workforce that maybe don't have that sense of fulfillment yet, and have never been a part of a really robust industry like healthcare. Once you start doing this type of work, you really see the value in the work you do. You get personal fulfillment. You can see outcomes as they relate to the work you individually do. I remember one of my first like come to Jesus moments with my job is when my kids were delivered, and I was still in the military, and I walked into a room and that my wife was in, and I saw nothing but initials of, friends of myself. And it was one of those like, oh, this is the work that me and my friends do downstairs in action. And I can't think of too many professions where you really get that sense of, purpose and fulfillment. So there's that personal value of like, as an individual, once you start doing this type of work, you're going to love it. And then the value of the work we do, it's necessary. Ryan touched on it. This job isn't going away. Just like nurses aren't going away, doctors aren't going away. Yes, there can be tools that are going to assist us, but at the end of the day, we need the bodies to move the equipment, to do the wrench turning, or to manage the AI. We're not going anywhere.
And to add on to that, I will tell you there's very few things more fulfilling in a career that when you fix something and then you come back an hour later to that department and you see it in use on a patient, and the nurse pulls you aside to thank you for helping them out, or when you get called into the middle of a surgery and all eyes in that room turn towards you and saying, "Hey, we need your help." And you're that barrier, or you're that person standing between the patient having a successful surgery or them it being delayed. That really matters. So that's what I always impart on people when they're looking for a career that matters, and that they can come home every day and feel like what they did today had an impact on somebody's life and on their community's life. There's nothing better than that.
Man, I tell you, really not a great fan of podcasts on videos, but this episode, I kind of wish we had cameras on, because I can really feel the pride you two have for this industry. The way you're talking about it, I mean, I can feel it through your voices. So I can imagine what your face expressions look like, and you literally show where pride is powerful. But we also know that if pride has no movement, that pride can begin to fade. And Ryan, this question is for you. You've been in the industry 20 plus years, and you're in leadership roles. Now, leadership can look polished from someone looking from the outside, but what has leading required of you on the inside? Because we always see Ryan as this guy that seems like he has it all together on the outside, but what has leading required of you on the inside?
Oh man, it requires a lot of vulnerability. And that's something I had to learn along the path. I was brought up in a household where you didn't show a lot of emotion. You kind of just shoved it deep down and moved on with your day. And leadership is hard because people are nuanced. The equipment's very static. It's X's and O's or ones and zeros, and people are variable. Everyone has good days and bad days. And for me, having the vulnerability to try to connect with them on a personal level and not treat them like equipment or like ones and zeros, that was something I had to learn in myself. Not because I didn't know how to connect with people. It's because I didn't know how to be vulnerable with other people. And for me, that's an essential part of good leadership, is how do you connect with people? How do you understand what they're going through or what their goals are and where they want to be, and help them become their best self? Because it's not always about just getting the work done. It's about, how do I enable each person who may be a technician or an employee in that shop to be their best selves? And that's really what it comes down to be honest with you, in terms of leadership.
Now, this question here is for both of you. You both gave numerous answers to this question, but I just want you to maybe just think on this, and I want you to take what's one mindset shift, just one mindset shift HTM professionals need to make if they want to keep growing. We know it takes many mindset shifts, but what's one main mindset shift HTM professionals need to make if they want to keep growing in the HTM industry?
It's funny that I don't think it's something new that people need to learn or shift. It's just applying what they already know to a different type of position. The one thing that we're continually faced with as a biomed or imaging technician is you will never know it all. You know, no matter how much you learn, no matter how many schools or trainings you go to, there's always something you still need to learn, or as soon as you get close to learning it all, they're going to switch the equipment out and you're going to have to learn new stuff. And that is just a good life lesson, because there's never a point where you're a finished product. There's always something next, and there's always something to be prepared for. And that's part of what I've tried to do. And I don't always do it well, but try to always prepare for not just what's next, but what's after that. And just kind of understand you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all the answers. It's more of that commitment to learning and growing.
Okay. What about you, Alex? What's one mindset shift?
I think one of the things that really changed the way I approached work was as much as possible, and to Ryan's point, we're going to try and preach these gospels, and they will or won't always be true, but trying to not end with the problem being a person. So, we can have difficult customers or nurses or whatever, but I try to never have the problem end at a person. I'd rather it be a process or a piece of equipment or an idea than the problem being, the problem's that nurse. When you start blaming people and you let yourself blame people, it really just prevents the type of work we want to do. Fundamentally, we're just trying to make that room open, right? We're trying to get that monitor up, infusion pump up, so that patient can receive healthcare in whatever way that looks. And when you let yourself blame people, you stop thinking about how you can solve problems, because you just are going to push the blame onto another person, another individual, and you're going to stop looking for answers. So when I stopped blaming people, and I would only stop myself when the problem ended at a process or a piece of equipment or a part, I saw a lot of dividends, because I improved almost all of my personal relationships with my nurses, with my clinical managers and directors, because I never let them take the blame either. Even when they kind of would step up and be like, I know we broke it. It's like, no, like you broke it because there's something wrong. Like was this work process not clear enough? Is there education we need to find? And instead of, even when they kind of get in front of it and they're like, we messed up, we know this, stop them from doing it too, because it shows that you're on the same team with them. It's like, no, like, I understand why you did it. How can we prevent you from doing that in the future? Is there education missing? Is the equipment not suitable for this floor? And I really start seeing a lot of social dividends in my facility.
Right now, the 2026 HTMA Ohio Conference and Expo is February 5th and 6th, correct?
That's correct.
Now, we're talking about leadership. I know on the 5th, does the Expo have something going on with leadership that you guys can probably share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate you asking. So last year, we started our very first annual leadership development course the Thursday before the conference. And we're going to repeat that again this year, where on Thursday, February 5th, we're doing a 3-hour leadership development course taught by Carol Davis Smith. And if you're not familiar with Carol Davis Smith, you should be. She's an absolute legend in the industry. She's been around for a very long time. She's extremely smart and expert at strategy. And that's what she's going to be doing this 3-hour workshop, leadership development workshop on, is HTM department strategy. So it is perfect for if you're currently a leader or you want to be a leader. in the industry, because our leadership development is not limited to just current leaders. We want to make sure it's open for anybody who is hoping to get there one day too. But you're going to spend 3 hours with Carol, and she's going to teach you how to build strategy and roadmap for your HTM department.
And I'll add, even if you are a part of a larger organization, a larger ISO that you're like, oh, I don't need that type of learning. I have my corporation behind me that'll give me all these workflow processes. You are wrong. You would, for those not in leadership, you would be surprised, or new to leadership, you would be surprised about how much you can influence the way work is in your account, even if you are a part of, the agilities, the TriMet, all these other companies. It's like, yes, you're in their infrastructure, but you as a leader can influence, and you need to know how to influence. Don't just rely on your company to tell you, because that's just one way to do business. There's plenty of other ways to do business. So you need to find what works in your account.
Yep. And I'll add on to that. Every clinical engineering or biomed or HTM shop I've ever been in or seen is only as good as their direct leader there on site. And I don't think that's a big secret. So after our 3-hour leadership development course, we have a free social outing at Smash Park. It's like a 5-minute walk from where the conference center is. We'll also have a shuttle bus where there's going to be free food, drinks, games. They have duck pin bowling, axe throwing, shuffleboard. It's going to be a ton of fun, and it's all completely free.
Oh, that seems like a lot of fun. Touching back on the leadership part there, going to a course like the one Carol was putting on, to your point, it's great because you're not going to be there with just your colleagues. You with people from different backgrounds, different parts of the industry. So it's like you almost building a leadership community together. And that, in a sense, gives you a type of belonging. And that's one of the things I love about going to these association expos. You get to meet people and you get to become that community. And that goes to my next question. And I'm going to ask both of you this. Why does belonging matter so much in our profession that isn't always seen? Why do you think that the belonging matters so much? I'll let you go first, Ryan.
Well, this answer is going to be different for every person. I really do believe. I know Alex mentioned earlier about the imposter syndrome that sets in for a lot of leaders. No matter what you've achieved in your career, and I know this is true of me, every time I've entered a new role, I've always spent the first few months wondering, why did they choose me? I don't know that I can do this, or I'm capable of this, or I was qualified for this. And when you are in a community of other people who are doing similar roles or have been in higher roles, or you get to learn a lot about yourself and get to learn from them. You also, when you build that community with these types of events where there's the managers from the hospitals in one city over or on the other side of the city, and you can start to ask them questions and they'll ask you questions, and you'll realize that we're all sort of learning as we go and we can learn from each other. And it's very, very beneficial to be able to, even if it's just commiserating with somebody who's in the same role as you, to kind of understand that you're not in this alone and you really are capable of doing this job. It's very, very helpful.
I would add too, that's just the value of associations in a nutshell. When you do commiserate with your colleagues and your peers, both above and below where you're currently at, other people get to see the value in you. And there's going to be points in people's careers where maybe they outgrow the hospital that they're in and they don't know where to go next. When you're in these associations, you'll have a community of people that when you kind of communicate that, it'd be like, I'm really ready for the next thing. I don't know where to go in my hospital. Like, I don't want to leave. And you'll have these colleagues that you've built relationships with that say, if you're ready for this next step, I think you should go here. Like, I am aware of a role that I think you would be good for. And having that, if you're battling with imposter syndrome personally, when you have that colleague that really says, I think you should apply for that job. Like, I'm going to refer you. I'm going to give that resume to the recruiter. You kind of assuage a lot of those fears of like, am I ready for this job? Because you have these other people that are doing the work saying you are ready. You should be pushed into this role. And it makes that transition that much easier.
I will add on to that in terms of a lot of the leaders from your community hospitals come to these events and they all know each other. So they can also make recommendations because they know too, if they have somebody who is outgrowing the position they're in, and maybe it's a hospital system that only has one manager and they've got somebody who's ready for that next step, and they can make that recommendation to one of their peers. As well as if you're going and you're part of those groups, now you know who the directors and higher ups are at those other hospital systems, where when you see those positions come open, you don't have to just blindly apply. You already know that person. Maybe you've seen them at a previous event, and you can, pull them aside and ask them about the position in person versus just blindly applying and hoping for the best.
Yeah, I mean, that's HTM in its essence, because unfortunately, HTM work often happens behind the scenes. Nobody know what we do until something goes wrong. Then they know us, and we pretty much thrive in that type of atmosphere. So it's kind of feels good when you go into an atmosphere where everyone appreciates each other, because we may get a few pats on the back, but for the most part, we're unseen. And it's good when you can go somewhere and you can hear everyone that feels the same way and appreciates with the work you're doing and know about the work you're doing. And like you mentioned, that just gives everybody that inspiration. But now I'm going to ask you this question. What changes when professionals stop asking, what do I get, and start asking, what can I build?
Yeah, and I will tell you from my perspective, this is very much a culture question. And luckily for us, it's the type of culture that can be set by anyone and everyone within the shop at all levels. Is what we put into this job is doing the right thing. It is easy to do the bare minimum or just what the job description says versus going that above and beyond and really making sure that we checked every single thing that could be wrong with that device, whether it's an IV pump or an MRI, to make sure that that machine is going to be fully functional for the next patient. It goes on, because in reality, in our work, there's never a job that's complete. Or there's never a time where there's nothing left to do. You might finish your PM list, but then there's always repairs, or there's always organization that needs happening in the shop, or cleanup, or whatever it may be. There's never a time when there's not something that needs to be done. So you putting in as your best effort is going to make everything around you better. And then as you move into that leadership aspect, it becomes not just, okay, how do I make sure that we're saving as much money as possible, or whatever it may be. It's how do I make sure I'm supporting each and every person in this shop, so they have what they need to do. They feel supported. They feel like they can do the best of their abilities. And when I worked within an in-house shop or whatever, any sort of clinical engineering shop, is I answer the phone no matter what, because I hope that one day when I have to call you for help, you answer the phone. And if you kind of maintain that mentality, no matter what role you're in, that giving back, not just so that you're going to get in the future, but just so we make sure everyone feels supported and everyone can do, to Alex's point, is fulfill the responsibility so the hospital can maintain patient care.
If HTM doesn't develop more leaders willing to step forward, what's actually at risk? I'll let you go first, Alex.
Yeah, so within our industry, we're afraid of right to repair becoming a really big thing. And not to speak badly of the vendors or the manufacturers, but they're coming from a different aspect of the industry than we are. than what I kind of view when I think of HTM leaders. I think of the people in the hospitals. If we don't become a larger cohort and having more of a presence in the industry, we're just going to be pushed around by the manufacturers of the world. And any issue techs are having of like, oh, it's so difficult to, get keys, get passwords, get training because I'm third party or because I'm hospital and not OEM techs. If we don't have a presence as a leadership community at that national level of, all of us within this hospital system are saying, we're not going to go with vendor X because of this, and we as a leadership cohort can influence all of our hospitals this way, then if they don't have that pushback, they're just going to be able to make these other professionals that are not from our side of the business. They're clinicians, right? They're nurses. The most hospital executives have some sort of healthcare administration background or clinical background and not the equipment side, and are going to sign contracts that aren't fair to the community. They're going to buy equipment that is not suitable for their facility because that is the only solution that has been provided to them. And we as an HTM leadership cohort really needs to be robust enough across all facilities to be able to influence and advise our clinical executives and be like, this vendor is notorious for doing this, or this model is guilty of doing this. We'd recommend having this type of safeguard in place if we go this way. And we only can do that if there's enough leaders to influence these facilities, because that hospital will keep going if that HTM leader isn't there. And the vendor or the manufacturer is just going to swoop in and kind of sell whatever contract, whatever equipment they can. And that at the end of the day, the community is going to be who's hurting.
Yeah, man, thanks. Now, Ryan, I love your answer there, Alex, but I want to get two perspectives, Ryan. Alex was on point with the leadership part, but we need leaders developed in different areas. So I just want you to go into a different aspect instead of just going in the same aspect that Alex went. Hopefully I'm not throwing your thought off with that. But
you're right on. So first off, that Alex's answer was fantastic. It's absolutely necessary. So I'm going to try to take this from a couple different angles. So the one kind of leading off of from what Alex said, keeping it very, very big, is we also have the aspect of like Joint Commission and the accrediting bodies on it. We need to be able to influence how they're accrediting our shops, how they're accrediting the work that we can do, whether it's the AEM or any sort of new regulation. They're looking for how do we write policies and then how are we enforcing those? But we need to make sure that they're putting into place regulations that are achievable, especially when you look at some of these new like HIPAA security rules and cybersecurity things. Like, are these actually achievable? So we need to be able to influence that. And then the next point I want to make is when we bring it back to the hospital, we have to have influential leaders within our hospital environment. This also goes back to a point Alex made earlier in terms of when he talked about how intimidating it can be when you're sitting in front of a high-ranking hospital leader, a CEO or hospital president, or even just a nurse director. Those are very intimidating conversations, and good leaders can not only sit within those conversations and have influence and provide good guidance, but they also can take part in these bigger overarching decisions that happen within the hospital. When we talk about capital planning and big projects, not just when they purchase new devices, but purchase new software, things if they're moving to a new medical record like Epic or McKesson or something like that. We have to, as leaders, be within those discussions because they directly impact our department. And because our department is one of the very few within the whole hospital that gets to go into every single clinical and non-clinical department within the hospital, if we're doing things correctly, if we are walking around with our eyes open, we end up with a very big perspective of how the hospital operates. And then that allows us to have that good input, good guidance, and be a part of how the hospital runs from both a financial perspective and, like I said, from projects, purchasing, risk management, all of these different aspects within the organization. So we need to be prepared for that. And to do so, we have to develop those types of leaders.
Yeah, to Ryan's point, I'd argue that the only person besides the hospital vice president of operations that truly knows that hospital is most likely that HTM director or manager. There's just no one else that collaborates with as many departments as we do, both on the clinical side and the infrastructure side, plant operations or facilities, IT. We touch so many different aspects of the hospital. And we're a problem solver fundamentally, and we are able to collaborate across all these different departments. And if we don't have leaders in place, the plant operations people are going to forget what the clinicians need, and IT is going to forget what plant ops needs. So we're really a glue in a hospital infrastructure.
HTMA Ohio. What is the theme of your conference and expo?
So every year we try to come up with some new theme on how we design our education and how we design our goals for that current year. So for 2026, our theme is pioneering the next generation of HTM. And that means both the next generation coming into HTM and also the next generation of leaders who are currently the technicians or supervisors, and even entry-level folks who are technicians now. How do we get them to the next level of their career? Because when we talk about all these people who are retiring, it is both technicians and leaders who are retiring and all these positions in between. So we got a lot of work to do to get prepared.
What do we owe the next generation of HTM professionals beyond advice? I mean, we can give advice all day long, but what do we owe the next generation of HTM professionals beyond advice?
If we're thinking about what we owe other people as leaders, and it not just being the information, I like to think about it as, we're all playing a game together. We need to teach people the rules of the game once they start becoming players themselves, but we need to leave them the game. We need to leave them the framework of what they're going to be doing, whether it be through an association or a policy or a work process, because that game is going to keep going whenever we leave. And we need to make sure that those new players are enabled to keep playing it. They're going to know the rules, but we need to be fair to them, that new generation, that they know where the resources are so they can, teach themselves even after we're gone.
Yeah, perfect. Because we think about it, you may have paid a lot of money to go to different seminars to get this extra training. Now, you have to give that to them for free. And some people may think that's unfair, but I personally believe that's what we should do as leaders. We owe that to the next generation. That's the reason we went through all of these trainings, not to just keep it within us. So everything we learn, we definitely have to give it to the next generation. I love the way you used the analogy with playing a game, because that was perfect. Because you get some new player, he may be trying his hardest to figure out to get to the next level. And you say, look, man, do this, do this, do this. Oh, man, that was simple. Same way with this industry. If we have the cheat code, so to speak, we should share it to make their moves much easier.
Yeah, and I mean, expanding even further, right? It's as an association, we tried to do a lot of work this year and last on really touching the community and kind of, if we keep with that game analogy, funneling new players in. And while it may be uncomfortable for us as biomed professionals, I mean, we work in basements generally for a reason, but that looks like getting in front of high schoolers and middle schoolers. And, just communicating with the community, because people don't know our profession exists sometimes into their mid-20s. And they're like, oh, I had never thought about it. But it makes sense that there's a mechanic for the hospital. And when we don't engage the younger generation in middle school and high school, we do ourselves a disservice because, there's a time where I want to be able to hang up my wrench and not feel like I left anything on the table. That looks like someone taking my place. And if I haven't enabled people to take my place, then I'm doing myself a disservice because I'm just going to keep working until, I can live with myself with leaving. So, I mean, get in front of those middle schools, high schools, engage community colleges and universities, and, start making people aware that our industry exists. And then, have people shadow you, have people do internships and apprentice programs and all the other fun programs you can do with getting people inside your shops.
Yep. I agree to add on to that. It's not just part of it is getting the word out and letting people know that this exists, and then it's paving the path so they don't have to repeat all the same mistakes we did in our careers. Imparting that guidance on them. Here's where I failed, so you can succeed, or here's where we struggled, so you can be successful. And that's true in terms of setting up the right education today, but then also within the shops of setting the right structure in place so there is a promotion path in place. And then the other thing I think is so important that oftentimes gets overlooked is we at any level within HTM is sometimes we get to see what somebody's capable of before they can see it themselves. And as a leader, you get the opportunity to identify that in them and pull them aside and say, you're capable of more than just doing IV pump PMs every day. Whether it's, I'm going to move you on to anesthesia, or I'm going to move you over to imaging, or I think you're ready to become a leader and become a supervisor. You see a lot of folks who they just think of themselves as, I'm a technician, I'm good at fixing things, that's what I'm going to do. And they don't see in themselves what they really truly can be. And I think that's part of what we owe to the folks coming behind us as well, is inspiring them to be more than what they are today, and then helping them get there. And if that means that one day they get promoted out from under us, or they get hired on with a hospital up the street, as long as that's creating a better life for themselves and a better position, a better leader at that other hospital, so that's okay. We did our job, right?
Absolutely, man. I mean, kind of giving myself a shameless plug. We're talking to the next generation. I got the privilege. Well, you guys invited me to do the keynote, and the title of my keynote is basically, you can't recruit who you don't reach, making HTM visible for the next generation. And Alex was talking about we have to go where the kids are. And I think, in my opinion, this is the first time in the history of our industry where we actually have the opportunity to paint the picture of our industry to young people, because nobody came to my school, and I'm sure nobody came to your schools. So we're in a great position to, not even the young people, to new people coming in, we can show them what it actually looks like in our eyes. Because when I came into this industry, my manager was an older guy, and he wasn't much of, he was an introvert. So he wasn't really into painting that great picture of what the future looks like. But you two guys are definitely people that I would want to be a B-Med 1 in your shop. And that's the picture that I think every HTM leader has. When we go talk to these young people, we can show them the greatness of what we do. And I don't think that's ever been a place in history where this time right now is something that we all have that opportunity to do. And I think that's one of the greatest things about this industry that I think a lot of people don't tap into.
And I would tell you, if I'm a student, one of these schools, middle school, high school, wherever, and it's a recruiter who comes in and is talking about the profession, I might not listen that closely. But if it's somebody who's actually doing this every day, and they've got the passion and they've got the experience, and they're talking about it, that's a whole different ballgame. We have the ability, because we've been through this and we're passionate about it, we're going to inspire a lot better than some recruiter or some stuffy businessman, whoever coming into the school and chatting about it.
Because it's so funny. I can tell you this. I did a career day. I was with a pharmacist. When he was doing this presentation, he was so talking about all the degrees he had and the colleges he went to, his college life. And the kids were just looking. I mean, he had it seem like none of that was attainable. So when we go talk about our industry, we pretty much telling them, we make it, like to your point, Ryan, we do this every day. So we can paint the picture. Look, you can do this in 2 years. Really, some doing less than 2 years. And just to watch a young person, because unfortunately, nobody know what we do. It's like telling them something and you can see the light bulb in their head blinking. And you're like, wow, I just told him something he never heard before in life. And imagine the privilege to say that to someone. You never heard of us, period. Not, I kind of saw you on TV. So we have a great gift that we can share with the world. And then our gift is also probably, I would say, almost saving the world. Because when they come into the hospital sick, it's what we do daily that keeps that hospital functioning. So I just think that, I don't know if a lot of HTM professionals realize what we possess, which leads me to my final question. And I want you to let this one settle in before you answer it. If someone listens to this episode, feels inspired, and then does nothing, what do they actually lose? And you go first, Ryan.
In reality, they're only hurting themselves. I mean, if they hear this episode and then they just go back to doing their job the way they've always done their job, or they go back to whatever it is they were doing, they're just losing out on the opportunity to really be their best selves, to achieve whatever it is that they've always wanted to be. You know, a lot of us sit back and think about all the what ifs and what could be. And for one reason or another, they never actually go for it. They just go back to their day-to-day job and they keep clucking away at whatever it is that they think they're good at right now, and without actually striving for the next phase, or the one after that, or the one after that, because that's how this goes. Is once you get your first success, it leads to that motivation, that inspiration of, well, if I can do this, what else can I do? And then if I can do that, what else can I do? And at every level in this industry, you're helping more and more people. You know, and that's one of the hard things. When you're a technician, you get that personal interaction of, you go into a room and you fix something and you know, you help that one patient. But as you start to do more and more and more, you're not just helping one patient, you're helping a whole hospital or a whole system or a whole industry. And you owe it to yourself to see what you can achieve.
Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be a little bit more pointed and maybe a little unprofessional on it, but if you feel the calling to do this and then you don't, you're essentially going to be the reason someone doesn't get healthcare, right? I'll put it as straightforward as that. You could have been the difference between whether or not that equipment was available for yourself. If you've ever been in an emergency room that was on a 4-hour delay because they were waiting for beds to open, biomed is the reason that bed was open or not. Sometimes that bed could be occupied because they're waiting for a bed on a clinical floor, and a room isn't open on a clinical floor because equipment was down, so the room was closed. So there's these cascading effects that lead to, is healthcare available when you need it? And I mean, as an industry, we're hurting on just having enough people to keep up with the work that exists. And we kind of touched on it earlier, you know, that there will always be work. And if you feel like you can make a difference and do this type of work, you kind of owe it to yourself and the community, because if you don't, that could be the reason that, you know, the x-ray was down an extra day because the x-ray engineers we have on staff were too busy to touch that one. And, you know, we really could have used an x-ray engineer within our facility. We really could have used another BMET1 in our facility. So it's just one of those things. I know that seems a little unfair to put it that way, but I'll try and guilt you into the profession. Like you could be the reason someone doesn't get healthcare. Like if you felt the calling, just give it a go. Do it over a summer, do a summer internship, shadow someone. And once you feel the result of the work you do, your mind will change. You'll understand that this is, if you felt that initial little spark of like, I really want to do this work, you'll feel the calling to do the work.
Ryan Gonzalez, Alex Collins. Man, I appreciate you both. This is what leadership looks like. To everyone listening, don't just be inspired, be in the room. Join us at the HTMA Ohio Conference and Expo, February 5th and 6th. This is HTM on the Line. I'm Brian Hawkins Sr. Y'all be safe out there, and I'll see you in Ohio.